Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. All in Crypto here, and today we are going to be talking about Cardano. And it's been a little while since I've jumped down the Cardano rabbit hole. We've been covering a lot of the great things that are going on and being taking place in the Basho era. We've been looking at Cardano as a blockchain, as a project, and admiring it from a sort of technological standpoint, even though my background is not in coding or blockchain design or cryptography. As somebody who has spent a long time in this space and compared and looked at different models of blockchains, Cardano is nothing short of impressive. But what I want to do in this video is something slightly different and talk about Cardano perhaps from a philosophical point of view and the opportunity that it really offers. You know, Cardano is not necessarily one of my favorite blockchains because I believe that it offers the best investment opportunity. Now, it may. However, the reasons for me at this point being behind and backing and continuing to talk and promote Cardano has a lot more to do with what the actual project itself is trying to do, and that is change the course of humanity. And I say that, and I can feel people cringing at that statement already, but what I want to do in this video is go down that rabbit hole and show you that Cardano was actually created for you. It was created to benefit and enrich you and to push back against the traditional financial institutions that have just such a grip over your lives. Cardano is the closest, or one of the closest blockchains to Bitcoin, believe it or not. And that sounds crazy. And the Bitcoin maxis that I don't really think that much of in regards to the ones that call every other blockchain outside of Cardano, outside of Bitcoin, sorry, a shitcoin. That makes no sense to me. It's like calling every other a little bit different, but it's like calling every other company that came out of the internet opposed to Apple or Amazon a shit company. You know, we know that that's not the case, and there's horses for courses. And I actually do agree that Bitcoin stands the best chance of being a store of value and is very separate. This word crypto is such a blanket term. Bitcoin is very special in many, many ways. But back on track to what I'm talking about, because you guys know I'm very good at sidetracking. Cardano is one of the closest things to Bitcoin. And what I mean by that is the ethos that Bitcoin was created out of by Satoshi to provide an alternative currency system, an alternative store of value that gives you an alternative to the corrupt fiat systems that hold such a bearing on everybody's life. I believe that finance is a tool that is used and manipulated to control people. Satoshi created essentially a fairer system. Cardano is trying to do the exact same thing, not in necessarily the sense of Bitcoin and it being solely a store of value and a peer-to-peer system for transactions, e-commerce perhaps, but it's trying to do it on a wider scale in regards to things like identity, voting, contracts, tokenization, finance. You know, it really has taken Bitcoin and the ideologies that came out of Bitcoin and furthered them. And this is probably predominantly one of the reasons why at this stage in my blockchain journey, I champion Cardano, because I really truly do believe that. And I can hear some people saying, oh, well, you know, we're only here to invest and we're only here to make money. I think there's a massive investment opportunity with that. We also think cryptocurrencies that look to work with the traditional financial systems rather than to challenge them, the kind of empire cryptos, if you will. I had a great conversation with my Patreons last night about this. They will do well also, but there's a issue that it does get fixed in some ways, but also doesn't in regards to these traditional financial institutions using blockchain, and that is them themselves. Something like Cardano and Bitcoin challenge that, and this is why we continue to back Cardano, probably more so than anything, because we believe in why it was created and all the thought processes behind it. So we're going to be starting things off for a Cardano video, rather interestingly, with the Bitcoin white paper. And then we're going to be playing a number of clips of Charles Hoskinson actually talking about this vision and what he's trying to do here with Cardano. And I think it will make quite a lot of sense. You know, currently right now we are still in the Basho era. We're starting to look at Voltaire and implement, and with the recent SIP that was announced, implement certain things to do with governance. But we are still in Basho. We are still scaling various parts of this blockchain, whether it be Hydra, which is on mainnet, whether it be Mithril, whether it be Marlow for scaling things like developability. You know, whatever it is, we are still rolling out these scaling solutions. We've got input endorsers and all sorts of things to come, and we can do more of a technical update on all that. But the age of Voltaire is possibly one of the most important ages of them all. Of course, the tech needs to be there in the foundations, and we spoke about this concept of the Cardano cake, not relating to these different eras, but more relating to the different layers that Cardano will have. Remember, Ouroboros was designed with being able to consent multiple chains in mind. But governance is something that is so misunderstood and is actually core to many great blockchain projects. And this is what I mean when I say that I think that Cardano is built to try and change the world, is because they've embodied this and made this a real focus and a priority. The ramifications of what governance can do in a decentralized system that may gain widespread adoption, it basically changes everything. And I want to sort of start the video off with a clip of Charles Hoskinson actually talking about this in a little bit more detail. So let's go ahead, guys, and play the clip.
So whenever you have a crisis of confidence in an institution, that is the invitation for mass social change. And in that case, it gave us the Renaissance, which led to the Enlightenment. The case of Russia in the turn of the 19th, 20th century, the destruction of the Tsarist policy led to a dystopian communist regime. So there's no guarantee that social change will be positive always. It can, of course, be negative, but these are inflection points in the arc of history. And we're at one right now, where we have to make a decision of how do we handle the fact that our institutions are at an all-time low in credibility and trust, and how do we handle the consequences of globalism? And the third category, which is existential concerns, which is something unique to the human race. Every century prior to the 20th, we didn't have the ability to wipe out the planet. Then suddenly nuclear weapons were invented. Now we do. And twice that we know of, we almost got wiped out. It was literally one person who made the decision for the entire human race. In the case of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the first officer of a sub, he refused to turn his key. The captain already had. And in the case in the 1980s, it was a Russian colonel who they had just installed a software upgrade and it had a glitch and it made it look like the Americans were launching weapons at them. And his training was saying you should launch the weapons from your silo, which would have provoked a nuclear war between the United States and Russia. In both cases, one guy was like, maybe we shouldn't end the world today. Not so good. And that's just one existential technology. And when we look at the 21st century, we have nanotechnology, we have environmental concerns with global warming, you have gain of function research, you have artificial general intelligence, and dozens of other potential existential technologies. And so the problem is that not only are they increasing horizontally in that the categories of existential technologies are increasing, but vertically in that the accessibility of these things is increasing.
And in the context of this, Charles, what would be your wildest dream for yourself, for Cardano, for the world?
Where we're going with this is that we are at this inflection point and we see the challenges, the inequality, the problems with globalization, the billions of people that are left out, and the proliferation of existential technologies that if left unmanaged, the probability of one of these killing the entire human race is very high. So given that those are the challenges, every person has to take a step back and say, well, are we going to just proactively try to solve the problem, or are we going to hope that other people are just going to figure out how to solve the problem? If you believe in freedom and liberty and you want to live in a free, enlightened society and you want to have self-determination in your life, you can't risk the second option of that somebody's just going to figure it out for you, because probably what they're going to do is embrace a legacy solution, which is hyper-centralization of power. And a very small group of people will have the total ability to control everything. So you ask, what are my dreams and hopes? Well, I would hope the better angels of our nature, to quote Steven Pinker, I believe in the best in people. And I believe that people, if they're inspired and brought up and given an opportunity to be their best, will become that. And so I believe that the tools of liberty and freedom can be used to solve the challenges, which are much worse in the 21st century than I would argue even in the 20th century.
Yes.
Very interesting. Again, like I say, Cardano's really been built with this kind of on top of the whole reasoning behind Bitcoin. And you have, with all technological revolutions, casualties. You have huge freedoms that are granted. The internet is a great example, one most comparable probably to the blockchain space. Although you could use the motoring sector, for example, as one. there were probably pros and cons to that, you know, in regards to maybe pollution, but time of travel, and the internet is another great example of freedom of information. But then there's various ways that the internet is used against us. Blockchain will be no different. And actually, this is why systems like Cardano are actually so important. I want to go over to the Bitcoin white paper before we move on to the last video that I have to play for you, which I think actually was retweeted by the Cheeky Crypto Crew. So shout out to them. I actually haven't seen this talk. They had retweeted it on their Twitter, and I thought it was great, and I want to sort of share it with you in regards to the talk, or a fragment of it. This is the introduction to the Bitcoin white paper. Commerce on the internet has come to rely almost exclusively on financial institutions serving as trusted third parties to process electronic payments. While these systems work well enough for most transactions, it still suffers from the inherent weakness of a trust-based model. Completely non-revisable transactions are not really possible since financial institutions cannot avoid mediating disputes. The cost of mediation increases transaction costs, limiting the minimal practical transaction size and cutting off the possibility for small casual transactions. And there is a broader cost in the loss of abilities to make non-reversible payments for non-reversible services. With the possibilities of reversal, the need for trust spreads. Merchants must be wary of their customers, hassling them for more information than they would otherwise need. A certain percentage of fraud is accepted as unavoidable. These costs and payments uncertainties can be avoided in person by using physical currencies, but no merchant exists to make payments over a communications channel without a trusted third party. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptography proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party. Transactions that are computationally impractical to reserve would protect sellers from fraud, and routine escrow mechanisms could easily be implemented to protect buyers. In this paper, we propose a solution to the double spend problem, which has been a problem that Satoshi really solved, using a peer-to-peer distributed ledger system. Is a peer-to-peer distributed time-stamp service to generate computational proof of chronological order of transactions. The system is secure as long as hosts honest collectively controlled more CPU power than other cooperating groups of attacker nodes. So Bitcoin was literally came about for a distrust and a need to change the trust element in e-commerce and finance. It's grown from just being a peer-to-peer sort of store of value to now, with the rise of Ethereum and Cardano, and remember Charles worked on Ethereum, now something that's actually looking to do more things than just be something that you can send and receive. It's looking to implement things like contracts that tokens can be built on top of in the form of NFTs, that you can put identities on that can be verifiable, to credentials, to absolutely everything in between. It is a huge, huge revolution that blockchain has actually brought to the forefront of society. And Cardano, I think, is really at the heart of it for the side of good, if that makes sense. I've got one more clip that I actually want to play you guys before I love and leave you. And then we'll wrap the video up. So this is a recent speech. Unfortunately, this is pretty blurry. I think this must have been taken on a camera phone. This is from Blockchain Futures Conference. And this is something that Charles Hoskinson had to say about the future of voting on operating systems as it relates to blockchain.
Give them a better voting system, they say, why can't I use this voting system? The thing I use to vote on my NFT project is apparently a better voting system than my damn country has. How about that? So what do? You vote for that. And then suddenly you wake up and you have a much more fair system. But then you start asking questions. You start saying things like, why is it in America two-party system? Why can't I have 5 parties? Why can't we do preference voting? So I pick my first choice and second choice and then third choice instead of just voting for one. Then suddenly we have diversity of thought. Suddenly people have to compromise and coalitions have to form. My Lord, think of that. How much would that change the world? How much would that change the society around you? Because the young people will demand it. Why? Because that's what they're used to, because when they have their NFT or their cryptocurrency, they've already gotten used to voting. They've already gotten used to this idea that they have rights. They've gotten used to being their own bank. They've gotten used to having financial privacy. They've gotten used to kind of being in charge of their life instead of having someone else be in charge of their life. But yet somehow we have to make this work not just for a small group of people, but for everybody. And that is the key for alignment with exponential technologies. You have to find a way to have these superpowers that can lift the world and give them to people in a way where they know what to do with them. They have the wisdom for what to do with them. The 21st century is going to be the most exciting in the history of humanity. It's the make or break century. You hear about the Fermi paradox and these things, like most things don't seem to survive past a certain point. This is the moment. You are now in control. The whole world is being rewritten and reprogrammed. All the conventions that we grew up with, all the statements about you can never be the president or the Navy SEAL or the astronaut, that's gone. It doesn't matter anymore. It's changed. You've been given fire, and you have to decide what you're going to do with that fire. And if we do a good job here, then I think we can do a good job everywhere else, and it's going to be one hell of a century.
Two interesting clips. Hopefully, maybe the reasons why I continue to back Cardano are a little bit clearer. It's not necessarily from an investment point of view, although I do think there's a real investment opportunity in the same way that there was with Bitcoin very early on with the likes of Cardano and an alternative system. But again, Cardano, actually, believe it or not, is one of the closest things to Bitcoin in regards to what it's trying to do, and actually is furthering Satoshi's vision. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section of what you thought about this video. Do you want more technical, price-orientated Cardano videos? And if you do have any spare Cardano, do remember that I do have a stake pool. ALLIN is the ticker. So if you are looking to stake, please do consider us as a stake pool. We are consistently issuing rewards and minting blocks pretty much every epoch. Well, every epoch for a long time now. So do consider that. See you all in the next one, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next.